Welcome to Something More with Chris Boyd. Chris Boyd is a certified financial planner practitioner and senior vice president and financial advisor at Wealth Enhancement Group, one of the nation's largest registered investment advisors. We call it Something More because we'd like to talk not only about those important dollar and cents issues, but also the quality of life issues that make the money matters matter. Here he is, your fulfillment facilitator, your partner in prosperity, advising clients on Cape Cod and across the country. Here's your host, J. Christopher Boyd.
Welcome back to Something More. Thanks for being with us. I'm Chris Boyd. I'm here with Jeff Perry. We are both of the AMR team at Wealth Enhancement Group, and I'm coming to you from our studio in our offices here in Hyannis. The Wealth Enhancement office has moved to 1575 INO Road, which is Route 132, right off of exit, what used to be 6. I think it's
don't ask me.
68.
It's still exit 6 in my mind.
Yeah, same. I don't know the numbers yet.
A very convenient location for people.
Yeah, it's very easy to get to.
It is.
And
it's very attractive.
You are coming to us
from the Treasure Coast, Port St. Lucie, Florida.
Excellent.
Yep. Beautiful day here in Florida.
Today that we're recording, it is Halloween. And the scariest thing I can think of is the coming election that you talked about at length with Brian Regan.
We did, yeah. Last week.
I did enjoy getting a chance to listen. Thanks for taking over the show while I was away. We'll talk about where I was and what I was doing in just a moment. I was at the Ed Slott IRA, what is it, the Elite IRA Advisor program. And there's some 480 some odd advisors across the country that participate in this, and 300 or so of them were at this event that I went.
Well, that's a good turnout.
Yeah, 332, I think they said. This is one of those instances where the rules around taxes and particular IRAs with the Secure Act and the Secure Act 2.0, it's gotten more and more convoluted, more and more complex. New rules that have come out by the IRS as it relates to clarifying some of the things that legislation isn't always clear sometimes.
Right.
So then how it gets resolved, and I'll tell you, there's a lot to learn, and that's one of the things that I've done over the last year or two. I made it a priority to say, we want to really be on top of these changes and revisions, and there's so much to be attuned to. You think a lot, and then you go to some of the kind of depth that is provided with this,
sure.
And you don't know what you don't know, and there's a lot of advisors out there that don't know what they don't know.
Yeah, if you just learn the basics, you can't serve your clients at the highest level for sure.
So we have the benefit of the back office to go to these IRA experts. Obviously, it helps us be, better at what we do, so that on top of our game. But we also have the resource to go and say, hey, this is an oddity. How'd you answer this? And they know the rules backwards and forwards. So it's really a great.
Yeah, it's a great resource for us when we have those unique or complicated questions to have that expert right on staff, so to speak.
So before going on, you guys did a great job, and people who didn't get to listen, go check it out. Last week's episode about the elections that are coming up, and it wasn't a politics discussion. It was strictly a conversation about the implications for prospective policy. And I think it was we tried. It was clearly defined that, look, even if you think what the outcome is going to be, policies, it's one thing to have a wish list when you're on the campaign trail. It's another thing to say, what can we get past? And there's a big difference. And I think there's a lot to think about. So. Yeah, and when there's a lot to think about when you're thinking about the election and what who you're going to vote for. Financial implication policies is one big part of that, perhaps for many.
I think so.
But there are other elements as well, including foreign policy implications. And you can go through a list of all these different elements of what are the key drivers of the election that's coming up. You implored everyone to get out there and vote.
Absolutely.
I don't have the same opinion. I want you to vote if you're informed, but not if you're not. Not just be an informed voter and get out and vote.
Yes, I hope that was implied, but I think if people are listening
about it, but I used to say the same thing, and now I'm like, oh, maybe I don't want everyone to vote. Jeez.
I think there's a high correlation. I think there's a high correlation to people who are listening to the Something More with Chris Boyd podcast that you are highly informed, educated.
You know what?
Probably
you
opinionated.
Make an excellent point,
right?
The people who are listening to something like this are going to be well tuned in.
Yeah, I'm not going down to the local drinking hole or, walking down the beach or whatever and encouraging people to vote.
Yeah.
I've seen too many of those interviews that various news stations do when they ask,
just on the Tonight Show or something. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Could you tell us who the current vice president is, or who, or who said this, and people just assume it's one or the other. And yes, those people, if they choose not to vote, is probably better. But, I'm seeing all these polls, which we all are. And the one thing that's different this year that I've noticed is there's no undecideds, right? So in these swing states, it's 48-47 or 49-49. So that means 2% of the people haven't made up their mind. And if there's 2% of the people,
they might be voting for other people, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I don't know. I think if you're going to vote, there's no way you haven't made up your mind. It's not like, gee, I think this one policy is better than the other, and I really can't decide. This one's pretty clear. And you're one side or the other, and I don't mean party. You're just one person or the other, or one issue or the other. Whatever it is, it's pretty clear.
It's astounding to me how we live in different realities. If you happen to listen to multiple sources of information, news,
isn't this the truth?
You'll notice the fact that there's like a total different worldview happening.
It is a total different worldview.
It's astounding to how dramatically different things are interpreted and the way the world is perceived. And I guess that's part of our challenge as a nation right now. But in any case, election coming up, and we'll certainly be talking about that next week, I'm sure. Which we assume we'll know results.
I'm sure we'll talk about it, but I don't know if we're going to know.
Because we probably won't know the results as well, right?
Oh, I hope so. Please, whoever wins, please win by a margin that is indisputable.
A landslide, yeah.
But I don't know if that's going to be the case.
I don't think it is, and I also think, I don't know what you hope for, but I kind of hope for a little bit of divided government, just so there's a little bit of checks and balances in the process.
Well, the market, as Brian and I talked about last week, not to stay on this topic, but the market usually prefers that, right? Because if either party has free reign, not that they get it right, but there's a reason that we have three branches of government, legislative having two branches, House and Senate. And the way that our founders set it up, they had a lot of course, they didn't know the issues we'd be talking about, but they had a lot of foresight of that making significant changes should be difficult. And divided.
Yeah. I mean, we don't want to, I think sometimes that's part of the frustration we have as part of the, as citizens, to say, geez, can't they figure it out? Can't they get things done? Which, understandably is a frustration at times, but there's also the virtue of that, and that is that there has to be consensus. There's not
it's protective in nature.
Changes of dramatic nature without unless there's been a sweeping election where there's just a big move to make
a mandate. They call it.
Yes, right? A mandate. Yeah. Right. That's right. So in any case, that's not what we're going to talk about today.
Nope.
Today, what we're talking about is probably some of the things that came out of this Ed Slott conversation, little nuggets, some of the things that we can share. And, before I forget as well, this weekend, daylight
Yes,
savings time.
that's right.
We will also be attending the gala that the Heroes in Transition Gala.
Oh, your wife Kristen is
Working
very
so hard
instrumental. I know she's been.
to help get that event off the ground, and I'm sure it'll all go smoothly and fabulous. And anyway, and then I also have the Holy Cross Club Cape Cod has their annual meeting. So I don't know. It's a brunch. It's a mass. It's a annual meeting to talk about the new officers and new board members and all that kind of stuff. So
All good things.
yeah. So let's get into today's topic, shall we?
Sure. Since we're in the end of November is right around our corner here, and we're setting those clocks back.
Yeah.
Makes me think of RMDs.
RMDs for sure. This
I'm
is
sure
the time of
covered that,
year.
right?
What's up?
I'm sure that was a big part of or at least a part of the conference.
Absolutely. This is one of those things where we're certainly talking about it with our clientele quite a bit right now. As we move into November, we're into the final 2 months of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And it is very common that people choose to have, when they have required minimum distributions, which is usually for people when they've reached 73 or older, that they will have a distribution requirement. Now, keep in mind, though, if you have an inherited IRA, you don't have to be that age to also have a distribution requirement that you need to satisfy. So, that being said, we're in that stage of the year where if people haven't already taken it, if they're not taking it some people choose to take it monthly,
Sure, right.
a regular kind of steady cash flow kind of thing. Other people just kind of wait and say, well, when's the ideal time to take it? Should I take it at the beginning of the year? Should I take it at the end of the year? And of course, the only answer is we'll see. Did the market go up or did the market go down this year?
People do try to time it right with the market.
So if the market goes up, waiting till some of the years gone by is a good time to do that. If the market goes down, you'd want to do it earlier. I saw an interesting thing where an advisor was saying he was thinking that one of the things he might want to try to encourage clients to do is in the first quarter, talk to them about, are you doing a qualified charitable distribution?
Right.
And if they are, do that early in the year that counts towards your required minimum distribution. Again, a qualified charitable distribution is this notion, if you want to give money to charity, you could take money from your IRA. If you're 70 and a half or older, you can take money from your IRA up to $100,000 in a given year, which of course more than most people would ever consider. But the idea that you could take money from your IRA and have it go directly to a charitable intention, a 501c3. This is relevant for charities, churches, hospitals, things of this sort, alma mater.
Right.
Yeah. So you could have money go to these, nonprofit entities, and it would be received by them without an income tax. They don't pay income taxes in these instances. So it'd come out of your IRA. You don't have a tax consequence. They don't have a tax consequence. This pre-tax money is now used without a tax. What a great idea. And then if you are of an RMD age, 73 and older, if you have a required distribution, it counts as part of your RMD. So let's say you had a $5,000 RMD and you took $1,000 to give to your church, charity, hospital, alma mater, whatever it is. That's $4,000 that now you have to take out. That's less taxable income that you have to satisfy to meet your requirement. Again, a required minimum distribution doesn't mean you can't take more. It simply means you must. The Uncle Sam's been sitting around waiting and waiting. All that time you were working, you put that money in there and you did it pre-tax. You got a deduction if it was an IRA or if you did it in a work plan, It came out pre-tax on your payroll deduction, and they didn't get their piece of the action.
They want it. Well, I don't know if they want it. They keep pushing the age out.
Yeah, that's right. Well, there's some good benefit for them in that process too, because it makes it a bigger nut later on, and bigger requirements that have to come out later on. So in any case, Uncle Sam's palms are getting itchy. You got to take a little bit out. So, and it starts off relatively modest, around 3.8% or somewhere thereabouts, that you start off, and it gets a little bit bigger as a percentage each year that you have to withdraw, so that, what is it? By the time you're maybe 80, Jeff, is it, you got 5% that has to come
80,
out?
yep, 5%, yep.
By the time you're 84, it's 6%.
Right.
Should you make it to 90, it's 88.2% you got to take out. So you get the point. These percentages get bigger and bigger as we age. So that can, if you delay it longer and longer, it might grow and grow, right? Which is good. Right.
Yes.
But the percentages that come out can push you into higher tax brackets as you get older. That's what
you were getting at, right?
Yeah, so that's not always a good thing to do. But in any case, this time of year, required minimum distributions, if you haven't taken it and you want to do a qualified charitable distribution, you got to do these things like urgently right now. Because as we get through the year, everyone starts trying to get those distributions, and the brokerage firms say, "Oh, we're inundated. We can't best efforts, but we can't promise you that we're going to get it done." So by the time you get into December,
they're not promising.
They might not guarantee that they'll be able to get your distribution out on time.
Right.
So you've got to do it now if you haven't done it previously.
This makes so much sense for the people who have RMDs, don't need the cash flow, which is, we see that frequently, and they're doing them anyway. They're tithing to their church or giving to the universities, and just
the qualified charitable distributions.
Right. Yeah. You're making them anyway. You're making those charitable distributions anyway. Why not reduce your taxes?
Yeah.
And one more strategy, which I'm sure they talked about, if you're giving over a period of years, maybe you might want to consider bundling 2 years into 1 year.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially this next year or two.
Right.
We're dealing with the change in the expiration of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, the Trump tax law.
Yep.
What was that? 2016? I've lost track of when that was, but in any case,
I think it was.
It's funny. There's, it depends on who talks about it, says what, but pretty much everybody had a tax reduction because the standardized deduction was bigger. The tax brackets were wider before you got into the next one.
Sure.
And the tax rates were a little lower. So all these different considerations tended to make it a little less tax for the vast majority of taxpayers. So that's going to end in not next year, but 2026. It's over.
Yeah. Right.
So 2025 is the last of those years. So if you're going to do that bundling technique where you might have enough charitable giving that would be more advantageous than your standardized deduction, might be a good time to be thinking about doing that to bundle. We probably will go back, and again, depends on how things get done. If they choose to extend the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, which should the Trump administration be elected, that's part of their platform. They'd like to extend those that tax law. So we'll see, I guess, what really happens and whether or not they can get that through.
Yeah, Congress has to do it, though. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And who knows? Yet to be determined.
So let me take a minute just to also talk about the notion, though, of inherited IRAs. You don't have to be 70s, 73 and older to have a distribution requirement. If you received an IRA that was, mom or dad or, somebody else that, other than a spouse, if you had this kind of inheritance, spouses are that's the own complicated thing.
Separate
So
rules.
let's just not
Yep.
deal with that for the time being. But and most spouses just roll it into their own IRA, and then it's their IRA. So, but
yeah,
you have,
most likely from your parent,
if a parent or something like that,
yep.
right? You then now have their IRA, so it's not your own. It's not put into your plan.
You don't roll it over.
You don't. It doesn't. It's not
Right.
yours. You can't put it into your own account. But now you have a distribution requirement you have to be mindful of, and every year you have to take it. Now, there's been confusion about how this works, as a part of some of the Secure Act activities, right? So, used to be that if you inherited an IRA, you could stretch it out over a lifetime. And there are a few instances where people can do that. If you inherited, let's say, from a sibling who's not more than 10 years difference in age, 10 years older than you, so you're not more than 10 years younger, you could stretch that out. You could take it as an income over a lifetime. There are some instances of disabilities and things of that sort. If you're a child, and that could be because you're a child who was born to this parent, a child who was adopted by the parent, in some cases maybe even a foster child. But in any case, if you're a child and under the age of majority, you can stretch it out at least until you get to 21, and then it falls into the 10-year thing. Everyone else has a 10-year rule. And there's a few exceptions, and I'm just generalizing.
Yep.
But you get the gist. Aside from those few exceptions, now you become the 10-year rule. You have to take it out within 10 years following the year the person died.
All at once or over 10 years?
Yes.
Okay. Option. You have a choice.
So you can. So now what? There may also be a requirement to take something out every year. So let's say though the person hadn't started their required distributions.
The decedent
has died prior to having turned on their required minimum distributions.
Okay.
Required beginning date, they call that. So then you don't have to worry about distribution requirements every year. You could wait till the last year and take it all at once. Whether you should is the question you might want to talk about with your tax planner.
Right.
Maybe your financial advisor to kind of help you navigate whether that's a good idea. But ultimately, you don't have to. If the person had started RMDs, the person who died and left you this IRA, now you also have to keep taking RMDs every year
for the 10 years.
For the 10 years. Now you don't have to take the whole thing out until the 10th year, following the year of someone's passing, right? So for that, you follow the gist, right? So now the IRS has been, because there's been confusion about this and hasn't had clarity about it.
Right.
They've been waiving this requirement. They've been saying, all right, well, we understand there's confusion. We won't enforce it yet. And technically you don't have to do it this year. They're going to also waive it this year because there's been confusion about it. But you probably should start doing it, just as an aside. And you probably shouldn't leave it all till the end either, as an aside. But next year, 2025, you will be required to make those distributions. And that can create its own confusion. Wait a minute, I never did this before. Why do I have to do it now? Right. So be attuned to this. And this is kind of convoluted, right? If you inherited an IRA, it's not your IRA, it's their IRA. Okay, the inherited IRA, and they had distribution requirements. They were of that age where they had already been required to do that. Then you have to take a distribution every year, as well as empty the account by the end of the 10th year.
Okay? Is it true that you could empty it in the first year?
You absolutely could.
Right.
Uncle Sam is happy to have you take that money as soon as possible and pay them their due.
Right.
Okay. So the requirement is the minimum, not the maximum, right? So you could take it in chunks. You could take it evenly. you could do however you choose to do it. Oh, I want to buy a car. I'm going to take it this year.
Right.
Whatever. But you have to take it by the end of the 10 years. And under certain circumstances like this that I'm describing, you would have to take it each year along the way. And the way that's calculated is different from the way you calculate if it's your own IRA, the required minimum.
Different table.
It's a different table, and it's a little more accelerated in the process.
So talk to your advisor.
There was something else I was going to reference, and now I've moved on. But there's so many interesting little tidbits as we go through these things.
Yeah, good to get some counsel before you do anything.
Yeah,
and make a plan with it.
Pardon me.
You referenced it, as this isn't spousal IRAs. Do you want to talk about those for a minute?
Yeah, I mean, there's some really convoluted rules here. So this could be its own lengthy
episode.
Yeah, which is probably more than people want, right?
Right.
But most people will choose to roll that IRA, that spousal IRA, into their own account.
Or create one.
So if they have an IRA, they could just roll it into their own IRA or create their own IRA. And now it's their IRA. Now, there could be circumstances where that might not be appealing. Let's think in terms of someone where husband dies. I'm killing off the husband, of course. The wife survives. And in this instance, let's say she's not yet 59 and a half. Let's say she's 55.
Yep. And needs the money.
And he's over 59 and a half when he dies.
Right.
She might want to keep it in an IRA that is an inherited IRA where she could access those funds annually. There's a couple of different ways it could be done, but essentially she might want the freedom to access that. And then later on, perhaps roll it into her own IRA once she's of an age where she could access those funds. If she rolled it into her own IRA in that scenario, she'd have a penalty tax to access
4
it
years,
before she's 59 and a half. So you can see some of these. There's interesting nuances as to when you might opt to do something different. And there were some interesting changes where they came out with a table. In this instance, a spouse could use the uniform table, where normally in an inherited IRA, we just said you would use the single life table. It's a different table. It's a different calculation and so forth. But this is an interesting change where
at her age or her husband?
Based on her age.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's a really, that was a recent development.
Could be beneficial.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess the thing to be aware of is circumstances are very unique. So in another instance, keeping it in his IRA or whatever, which is a possibility, might not be appealing if you didn't want the income, because he might have distribution requirements if in that age difference.
The opposite thinking, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So you could run into different circumstances where it might require a little bit of strategy to think about which is the best way to do this, and don't be impulsive and just say, I got to get my hands on that money. Let's do it right away. You might want to really be a little bit deliberate, have some strategy, make sure you got the right plan. And it might not be the same thing for all IRAs. You might have more than one account. And you say, this amount, we're going to do it so we have access, and this amount, we'll do it just so it's, these different approaches where the rules are a little different on different circumstances.
Right.
So I didn't cover all the nuance in that response, Jeff, but just to give the sense that there's a lot of complexities that different circumstances could warrant. So it might require a little bit of thought, thinking through what's the best way to do it in terms of.
Yeah, get some counsel before you do anything, right?
Yeah. Isn't that interesting, though?
to undo these things is
sometimes you can't.
right. That's right. Sometimes they're
it's
decisions
an
are
election
permanent.
and you're done.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Also, at the end of the year, as we're starting to get there, on the other end of the spectrum, I think about contributions, right? So people who are still making contributions to their retirement plans,
Yeah, absolutely.
it's time
Not
to
too late. Not too late. You don't have to
not too
wait
late.
till April for your IRA, for example. Or, I mean, what about if you have a 401k, 403b, something that's an employer payroll
Right.
deducted?
Well, then you can't wait till April.
Yeah, you don't have that choice. So, you may want to look at and say, hey, should I be taking more out? Can I do more?
Yeah, there's an opportunity to max this out this year, right?
Right. So now everyone's income and abilities are different, and it may be incremental difference that you say, oh, I really can't max it out, but I could do a little bit more. Well, do a little more for the last 2 months of the year.
Oh, I see. Right. Yep.
You know what I mean? If you can do a little bit, do a little bit. But everything you can do is better than not. So now, if you wanted to try to max it out, though, depending on your age, if you're below the age of 50,
Mm-hmm.
in a 401k, 403b,
A work plan, right?
457b,
Yep.
et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
Some of those have Roth options and so on. You could do up to $23,000
Right.
of that salary deferral or whatever you want to call that. Okay.
Yep.
Contribution. Now, if you're 50 and over,
Mm-hmm.
you can do more.
Catch up.
There's a catch-up election on, and you could be doing $7,500 as well. And you know what, Jeff? It's not on our cheat sheet here. I got a little. We like to. I refer to this as our cheat sheet. We have this little resource that Wealth Enhancement Group put out where it's all kinds of 2024 personal finance facts.
Not just ours. We'd give it to you.
Oh, we're happy to give this to you. It's great. And I'm sure we'll have a new one next year.
Yep.
This is a great resource. I pull it out all year long and look at all these details.
Oh, you can't memorize it all. No one can.
No, it's just too, it's so handy, right, to have.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm trying to remember now whether it was for IRAs or work plans where in your 60s, there were some additional catch up provision. I think that was in the IRAs. Do you recall?
I recall the discussion. I don't recall the details.
Yeah. So,
and it is not on our sheet.
Yeah, it's not on the sheet, but we certainly can look it up. If you find yourself in your 60s and saying, "Oh, I could do more," give us a call. We'll certainly look that up and get you a detail. 508-771-8900 is the telephone number if you want to reach us. But there is the opportunity to do a little bit more in of a catch-up provision in your 60s. As well. Let's talk about IRAs though, Jeff. So 401ks, 403bs, you have that
right.
Essentially 30,500 that you could do if you're 50 and over. And there are caps and so forth. And there's different plans. And if you're in a simple IRA, that's different than a work plan. What's the details for the
if you're in a SEP IRA, self-employed, you can have an even bigger number. So
yeah, depending on your income, and
right.
it works out to a percentage of what you make that you can't exceed a certain percentage, 20, 23,
25% of your net self-employment income up to $69,000.
And there's some nuance around it because I think for if you are self-employed and like a certain percentage of ownership, there's some additional restriction on that percentage. I think it ends up being around 20, 21%. But in any case, ordinarily 25%, as you said, and 69,000 is a lot, but that has to be
you got to have a big income,
big income to justify that,
right?
Which is great, good option to have. Keep in mind, if you have employees, they also get to participate in that contribution. Simple IRA is a little different. Maybe you can talk about that.
$16,000 limit with a catch-up provision of an additional $3,500.
Sounds good. And I was going to see while you're doing that, you're too quick. I was going to see if I could find the.
Well, while you're looking it up, I'll just talk about the regular IRAs. People establish an IRA or a Roth IRA, and the contribution limit this year is $7,000. And if you're 50 and over, you can throw another $1,000 in there for $8,000. And whether or not that's deductible has to do with your marital status and your income level. So sometimes if you make too much, it's not going to be deductible.
Yeah.
And same goes for your Roth IRA. 7,000 and then 1,000 if you're 50 or above. And then when you have the income, just for single or head of household or married, different levels, you may or may not be able to make it. And if you're on the fringe, the amount that you'll be able to contribute could go down a little bit, could be under the maximum if you're at a certain income level.
Okay. I found what we were looking for on the other issue. And this is relating to
60
IRAs.
plus?
It's 60 to 63, but it is not until 2025 that it
Oh.
takes effect. So don't even worry about it this year.
All right.
We'll be masters of it by the time this is relevant.
Yeah, it's not on the sheet.
Yeah.
So the lesson here is if you have the available cash,
do more
because it matters. It matters in the long run.
Yeah, every little bit helps, and then the compounded effect of that is dramatic. You know, another thing that's a year-end topic, Jeff, is the idea of the wash sale rule.
Right.
And
maybe we should define it before we.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. What it is. So essentially, if you try to sell something and have a capital gain or loss, you know, and you want to, let's say, for example, you have an investment that went down, you want to lock in a loss.
Yeah. And people do this at the end of the year, right? Let's get a tax advantage by selling this thing.
Reset where my tax thing is, get a tax benefit. I'll offset some gains on something else, or I'll have some, $3,000 deduction potentially, on my tax return. So people will often try to do something where they sell something at a loss, but they really want to keep it. They really like it. So they'll buy it back. And a wash sale is you can't buy it back too soon.
Yeah, you can't sell today and then buy it tomorrow. It's actually 30 days, right?
30 days. So you want to exceed that before you buy it back.
Mm-hmm.
So an interesting thing I came across was does the wash sale rule apply to your IRAs? If you said, gee, I really like that stock, I'm going to get a capital loss in my joint account or whatever, but maybe I'll go buy it in my IRA. That's a whole different animal.
Question, because you don't think about the tax implications within the IRA.
Sale, right? Yeah, it's kind of irrelevant, right? You're not dealing with capital gains.
That's right.
My impression from what I was told at this class is that it does
the rule
adversely impact so it could disrupt your wash sale trading activity. So don't try to outsmart things by doing it in your IRA. You might outsmart yourself and not get the benefit.
That's good to know. That's I don't think most people knew that.
Wouldn't have even thought of it as a
hadn't contemplated
risk. Yeah, but it seems like it would make sense that you should I can do that in my IRA.
Because why would the IRS care?
It's not a capital gain loss picture. Yeah. But don't do it. We've had a lot of conversations about Roth conversions and a lot of discussion around this.
We're going to have more of them next year too, because this is something to do with tax rates, which back to your previous comment about the Tax Cut and Jobs Act that may be expiring at the end of 25.
And so if rates are expected to rise, naturally people start to think, maybe I want to choose to pay some taxes sooner while tax rates are lower and the bands are lower and all this other stuff.
Right.
It is a choice to pay tax, which, sometimes people don't want to do until they absolutely have to.
That's me.
Yeah. We don't want to necessarily suggest that we know what the future holds, but you look at. I was sharing with you this article I've been holding on to. Came out earlier in the month that the
Wall Street
deficit. Yeah, Wall Street Journal.
Right.
The headline was the deficit's pegged at $1.8 trillion for the fiscal year that passed.
And for the people who get confused by the words debt and deficit, that's how much we overspent this year or last year, as the case may be.
Yeah, in the fiscal year 2024, I think.
Right.
So, which for the government ends in the end of September.
Right.
Yeah. So, ouch, right? But when you look at these accumulating debt, you can't help
honest about history.
You can't help but be a little anxious that tax rates have a good possibility of going higher because we are not we keep outspending what we're
someday
in.
Someday.
Someday. So in any case, putting that aside, whether tax rates will rise, we know they're going to rise just by the current plan, unless Congress takes some action one way or another, right?
It's hard to believe they're not going to rise.
It's hard to believe that taxes won't rise.
Right. So
the idea of a Roth conversion has some appeal to consider, at least partially, like within a tax bracket or whatever. So these are things that this time of year is a natural revisiting. Oh, should I? Shouldn't I? How much? All right, how much was my income? We'll dummy up the tax return kind of picture to think maybe I should do some.
Right. It's not all or nothing. And especially for those people who might find themselves in a lower income level in a given year, it's a double opportunity because they can stay in a lower tax bracket than they might normally be in.
Yeah.
So depending on your individual circumstances and your outlook for income levels, obviously if you think your income's going lower in the future, maybe not so much, but if you think your income's going higher, that puts more emphasis on should I do this now?
Good point. Yeah, it's more compelling, right?
Right.
So, and I think if you're in the top tax bracket, as a reality check, you're probably going to be in the top tax bracket for a while,
and the top tax bracket's going to be higher.
Yeah, so it might be. So you're in the low tax bracket, you're in a high tax bracket. Roth conversions might make sense to give thought to sooner rather than later, right?
I want to ask you a question. I know we're running out of time, so if you don't have time to answer it, we can kick it to next week. What do you think about the common advice of if you're going to do a Roth conversion, you should only do it if you have taxable money to pay the tax? In other words, not taking the principal out of your retirement account.
I think as a general, again, generalization, but as a general game plan, I agree with that mindset. It is generally less appealing to say, okay, I'm going to do this conversion and it's going to cost, I'm going to do $100,000 Roth IRA, conversion from my IRA to my Roth IRA. Okay. And that's going to cost me
24%,
$25,000 in taxes or whatever. Right? So to do that, I need to take out $125,000. No. I need to take $137,000 because when we had it all figured out to get my $100,000 or whatever,
or the 100 turns into 75 or whatever it is.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? Yeah.
So I think generally that's less appealing to do because you're so much of that is going to the tax and it's undermining the benefit of it.
So you need a few years of normal gains to get back to a number of years to get back to where you were.
Yeah. I think the ideal is to have the resources outside of the IRA. And this comes back to that notion of tax diversification.
Absolutely.
And we see this, you and I see this regularly, right? Where will deal with clients, and sometimes they have the vast majority of their money in IRAs. They've done a great job saving, but they've done it all through work plans or, primarily work plans as the way to do it.
Right.
And they have some money for, non-IRA account, but it dwarfs in comparison to what they have in the retirement plan.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe in some of those circumstances, they don't really have much in the Roth, right?
Yep.
So you end up with this circumstance where it doesn't take much for them to use up the non-taxed, if you will, money, either non-IRA or the Roth IRA. The non-IRA is taxed, but you know what I mean.
I do.
The joint account or trust account or whatever it is, that gets used up quickly. And then that leaves them with, every time they want to buy a car, they got to take out not $30,000, but $55,000 or whatever, fill in the blank. And that adds up.
It's often not calculated that way in people's personal financial plan that they have. They put that number in for the car and don't realize where they're getting the money from.
More.
It's going to cost them 30% more.
And I think we also tend to have a false sense of wealth sometimes when we have a large retirement account. That's got a $2 million IRA. Mm-hmm. Well, you do, but you don't, because
1.4.
Yeah, Uncle Sam's got his hand on a third of that or whatever it is.
Yep.
So you don't always think about it that way. So you can't really spend $2 million. You can spend, like you said, maybe 1.4 or whatever.
Right.
Anyway, so I as to answer your question, what are your thoughts? Do you have opinions about that?
I am pretty strict that I agree with you. Like if you want to do this as part of it, I want you to do it and get all the benefits of it, paying that tax now. And to me, one of the benefits is maintaining that principal balance in your Roth after the conversion.
Yeah.
Obviously, the longer you have to do this too, it depends on your age, a lot of factors. We can model it out for you. We do that frequently for our clients.
Absolutely.
So if you're thinking about that,
it's really probably important to do that.
Yeah. It's not a feeling thing. It's a math question.
Yeah, really, just see how it plays out.
Yeah, because
similarly, and also often a year-end thing. I'll just throw in a couple of quick other things. Gifting. This is another thing that's you got to model it out. How's this apply? I want to help my kid with $100,000 toward a house. Oh, that's great. How many kids do you have? I have 3. Can you afford to give up $300,000, or are you only doing it for one of your kids?
What's the consequences of that?
Right? So okay, or just I want to do an annual gifting. I'm going to give each of the kids. What's the maximum gift allowance these days, Jeff? Do you know offhand what it is? 16 or something?
I think it's 18 this
18.
Yeah.
Handy dandy sheet here.
I don't have my gifting sheet up, so let's see if I was right.
I got it. You're right. 18,000. That is the number. So
don't want to get things wrong when you're on with the boss.
So if you're thinking, I'm going to give all the kids, the maximum. Okay, well, you're going to do that every year, or how often you can do that? Let's plan that out. Is this a one-off? Okay, yeah, you can do that, or no, gee, that's going to really take a bite. Maybe you want to do 10,000, 5,000, whatever it is, and you can kind of model that out. Year-end gifting can be, we see a lot of times the generosity of parents that leads to their own
detriment, right?
Yeah. Charitable giving, we talked a little bit about already.
Yeah.
That's another year-end gifting kind of thing. And we talked about qualified charitable distributions, but appreciated stock is also maybe not as appealing, but it's certainly an appealing way.
It could be.
To gift to charity, because it avoids a capital gains tax for you, and they don't have that.
Certainly don't want you selling it and then giving the proceeds away.
Exactly. Exactly. It's like, why you shouldn't have that tax.
Right.
I don't know. Was there anything else that was on your mind that was like, I'm sure there's other things we could have talked about, but anything that's like, oh, that was another really big deal for year end kind of thing?
No, I wanted to spend some time. I know you shared with me offline when we were just talking about your experiences at the Ed Slott conference
Yeah.
about scams and such. I think we should include that in a future episode because it's so prevalent, and hearing some of the stories and lessons from other people's falling for scams, I think is helpful.
Yeah, you've had that on the agenda for a while as a topic we could spend some time on. Let's do that as our next podcast episode then. Sounds
Okay,
like a plan.
great.
All right, so join us next time where we'll talk about scams and an interesting story about a taxpayer who got scammed from money out of their IRA. But do they have a tax penalty to deal with, or can they get it back
Yeah,
in?
can you be scammed and taxed on your scam?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh boy.
Ugh, what a pain in the neck. All right, so we'll talk more about that in the future.
Yep.
And thank you for joining us. If you do have questions as you think about dealing with any of your planning, whether it's financial planning or portfolio management, particularly as we're getting toward the year end, there's no time like the present to deal with these issues. If you need a little help, that's what we're here for. We're happy to be a resource to you. Reach out to our office either by giving us a call or sending us an email. The information will be right after this as we close out the show. Until next time, keep striving for something more.
Thank you for listening to Something More with Chris Boyd. Call us for help, whether it's for financial planning or portfolio management, insurance concerns, or those quality of life issues that make the money matters matter. Whatever's on your mind, visit us at somethingmorewithchrisboyd.com or call us toll free at 866-771-8901. Or send us your questions to amr-info@wealthenhancement.com. You're listening to Something More with Chris Boyd Financial Talk Show. Wealth Enhancement Advisory Services and J. Christopher Boyd provide investment advice on an individual basis to clients only. Proper advice depends on a complete analysis of all facts and circumstances. The information given on this program is general financial comments and cannot be relied upon as pertaining to your specific situation. Wealth Enhancement Group cannot guarantee that using the information from this show will generate profits or ensure freedom from loss. Listeners should consult their own financial advisors or conduct their own due diligence before making any financial decisions.